in the heart of medieval Bohemia, where the stone fortresses rose like jagged teeth against the sky and the forests whispered with secrets no priest dared bless. There once lived a king named Vladislav, whose reign was remembered not for glory or triumph, but for cruelty, paranoia, and a death so unspeakably grim that it still echoes across the centuries. His life was forged in shadows, his throne carved, not from the loyalty of his people, but from the terror that bent them to his will. And it was this same terror that would one day betray him. Vladislav had inherited a fractured realm, a land torn by disputes between noble houses, mercenaries who swore allegiance only to coin, and foreign powers always seeking to turn Bohemian soil into their battlefield. To rule such a land required not gentleness, but an iron heart, and Vladislav gave himself fully to that creed. He taxed mercilessly, punished ruthlessly, and demanded obedience without question. The peasants whispered his name with dread. The nobles smiled falsely while sharpening daggers in the dark, and his soldiers, those who ate at his table and swore oaths upon their swords, feared him as much as they served him. Vladislav trusted no counselor, no bishop, no ally beyond his own army, and even among them his suspicion never slept. He rewarded loyalty with gold, but punished hesitation with blood, and it was said that in his castle at Prague, the dungeons were never silent, always filled with the cries of men accused of treachery. Yet even iron wears thin when struck too often, and the men who followed him began to whisper against him. Soldiers are not born as steel. They are flesh, weary and wounded, haunted by the memories of villages they burned, families they cut down, and fellow comrades executed at the king's command. In their hearts resentment grew, and though none dared to speak of it openly, the seed of mutiny had taken root. It was Radomir, one of his most trusted captains, who carried the deepest hatred. Years earlier, Vladislav had executed Radomir's kin, accusing them of treason against the crown. Radomir survived by bowing his head, swearing loyalty with clenched fists, and enduring the humiliation of serving the man who had destroyed his bloodline. To Vladislav, he was a faithful servant. To himself, he was a blade waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came on a bitter winter night when the wind howled against the castle walls and the torches sputtered like dying stars. Vladislav walked the halls, unaware that his soldiers had already chosen this night to end him. He was surrounded, not by foreign assassins, but by his own guard, the men whose armor bore his crest and whose swords had spilled rivers of blood for his throne. When they turned upon him, the king's roar of outrage shook the chambers, but fury alone could not shield him. He fought like a beast cornered, his voice echoing with curses, his eyes burning with disbelief that those he had fed and armed now betrayed him. Yet they did not kill him with the swift mercy of a blade. Instead, they had prepared something far crueler. From the shadows they dragged forth a coffin, no ordinary casket of wood or stone, but a monstrous box forged entirely of iron, heavy, cold, and suffocating. It was a prison designed not to preserve the dead, but to devour the living. Legends claimed that the coffin had been fashioned in secret by blacksmiths whose hands trembled as they shaped it, ordered by conspirators who wished to ensure the king would not simply die, but suffer. Into this iron tomb the soldiers forced their monarch. He cursed them, spat upon them, fought with every ounce of his strength, but one by one the locks fell into place. The lid clanged shut with a sound that echoed like a final judgment. Bolts slammed across the seams, and the king of Bohemia was left in utter. He was buried, not with prayers or rites, but with silence, carried out beyond the castle walls and lowered into an unmarked pit of frozen earth. The soil fell heavy upon the iron coffin, and with each shove, the voice of Vladislav grew more distant, until at last only the wind remained to mourn him. What happened inside that coffin cannot be told by chronicles. Yet the evidence remained, waiting for centuries to be discovered. For inside that sealed iron womb, Vladislav did not surrender quietly. In the stifling dark, with air growing thin and panic rising like a tide, he clawed at the walls with desperate fingers. He pounded with fists, scraped with nails, slammed his body against the metal in a frenzy of survival. Every breath was stolen from him, every heartbeat hammered like a drum of doom, until his body weakened. His voice broke into silence, and his struggle ended, not in dignity, but in gasping despair. The iron coffin swallowed him whole, and for centuries it lay beneath the earth. A forgotten secret, while empires rose and fell above it. Time passed. The castle changed hands. New kings reigned. Wars burned the land. And still, the iron coffin slept, untouched, unseen, unremembered. Only in whispers did the legend persist that Vladislav had not been given a noble death, that his soldiers had sealed him away alive. Most dismissed it as superstition, another tavern tale told to chill the spine. Yet centuries later, fate unearthed the truth. During renovations of an ancient burial site, laborers struck something strange. Their shovels rang not upon stone but upon metal, blackened and heavy, resisting their touch as if it had no place among the bones of ordinary men. When at last they dragged it into the open, awe and dread seized them. A coffin not of wood, not of marble, but of rusted iron, its weight monstrous, its presence unnatural. Some swore the air around it was colder, that their skin prickled with unseen malice. When the lid was pried open, silence fell like a shroud. Inside lay a skeleton, twisted, contorted, the skull tilted upward, as though it had once strained toward the faintest trace of air. But more haunting than the bones were the marks. Deep scratches scarred the interior walls, desperate gouges carved by human hands in the last moments of terror. Each mark told a story, the pounding of fists, the scraping of nails, the refusal to surrender, even as the darkness devoured him. The men who saw it shuddered, for they knew at once the legend had been true. The king had been buried alive. His soldiers had given him no escape, but left his final screams to be absorbed by unyielding iron. From that day, the tale of Vladislav's iron coffin spread once more. Historians debated, skeptics dismissed, but the evidence could not be denied. Those scratches were real, and they spoke louder than any chronicle. The people whispered that the coffin was cursed, that those who disturbed it would dream of suffocating in darkness, gasping for breath as unseen walls pressed closer. Some claimed to hear faint scratching sounds in the night near the excavation site, as though the king's restless spirit still clawed at his prison. Priests warned against keeping the coffin above ground, urging it to be sealed again, but curiosity and fear locked in uneasy battle. For what lay inside that coffin was more than a corpse, it was the very image of human desperation. The eternal scream of a king who ruled with iron and died by it. The symbolism was not lost. Vladislav had bound his kingdom in chains of fear, forged his throne from iron discipline, and met his end in an iron box that reflected his reign. His soldiers had taken from him not only his life but his legacy, reducing him to a cautionary tale etched into metal. To this day, the story of Vladislav's iron coffin is told as both history and horror, a reminder of the cruelty of men and the futility of power. For in the end, all his might, all his cruelty, all his suspicion could not save him from the betrayal of his own and the suffocating silence of iron. And when the coffin was opened centuries later, it was not gold, nor relics, nor royal regalia that greeted the world, but scratches raw, desperate, human scratches that revealed the final truth, that even kings beg for air when the walls close in, and that death in darkness leaves marks no time can erase. Thus the tale endures, not because it was written in books, but because it was carved in iron. Vladislav's coffin still stands as one of the darkest relics of medieval cruelty, a prison that held not just a king's body but his final, futile hope. And so long as men fear the silence of being buried alive, so long will the iron coffin of Vladislav haunt the imagination, reminding us that history is not only written in ink and blood, but also in the desperate scratches of those who perished unseen.